New footage shows this is how Ukrainian FPV drones take out Russian soldiers fleeing foxhole near Avdiivka. A Ukrainian first-person view (FPV) attack drone was then dispatched to finish off the tank, and Russian soldiers' crew eventually fled on foot foxhole. Then, that two of the fleeing Russian soldiers were killed in action due to FPV drone attack, and a third captured by Ukrainian forces. While earlier footage of the clash appeared to show the T-90 losing control, its turret spinning in a frenzy before hitting a tree after being attacked by a Ukrainian Bradley infantry fighting vehicle. Ukraine's US-supplied Bradley infantry fighting vehicles disabled one of Russia's most advanced tanks, peppering its armor with projectiles before it smashed into a tree. Drone footage released by Ukraine's 47th Mechanized Brigade claims to show the Russian T-90 coming under heavy fire from close range in the Donetsk town of Stepov. The tank appeared to take multiple hits during the Ukrainian salvo, with each direct strike letting off a bright flash as it hit the Russian fighting machine's armor. Rob Lee, a senior fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, said the battle demonstrated that infantry fighting vehicles can successfully engage and seriously damage modern main battle tanks. The T-90 is one of the newest and most advanced tanks being used by Russian forces in Ukraine, despite eventually being overwhelmed by the Bradley's 25mm cannon fire. It displayed greater resilience than other Russian tanks that have been destroyed by Ukrainian forces. Videos have been shared on social media showing the turrets of older Russian tanks being sent skywards after the ammunition stored in the hull exploded following a direct hit. Mr. Lee added that T-90M took 20 plus 25mm rounds to its frontal armor and also an FPV strike. The entire crew survived, but an IFV infantry fighting vehicle or APC armored personnel carrier would not have been as lucky. The T-90's survivability appears to match that of the British Challenger 2 and German Leopard 2 tanks, which have been donated to Ukraine. While both NATO standard tanks have been disabled on the battlefield in Ukraine, Kyiv's forces have not lost a single crew member in any attack. Hamish de Breton-Gordon, a former Challenger 2 commander, said the T-90 had likely succumbed to a Bradley because Russia still favored firepower and mobility over heavier, more protective armor. It shows just how vulnerable Russian tanks are because protection comes a distant third to firepower and mobility. While Mr. de Breton-Gordon also suggested the Russian tank could have come into difficulty because it was manned by an ill-prepared crew. Russia has lost 6,147 tanks since the start of the war. According to estimates by Ukraine's general staff, they might be getting enough tanks back on track, but they just can't come up with the trained crews, which is proving a real problem for Russia, Mr. de Breton-Gordon said. American Bradleys were initially handed to Ukraine's 47th Brigade, along with Leopard 2 tanks, to spearhead the spring-summer counteroffensive last year, and the vehicles offered superior protection but became trapped in vast minefields, causing the offensive to largely fail. Around a third of the 50 donated by Washington were lost in the initial thrust, while many were destroyed. The vehicles were credited with saving their crews' lives in drone and artillery attacks, thanks to the Western armor fitted to them. Kyiv's best-equipped brigade was eventually withdrawn from the fight in October to help defend the embattled Donetsk region town of Avdiivka, near to Steptov. But the Bradley's fight with the T-90 was billed as a David versus Goliath by Mr. de Breton-Gordon, one which should come as encouragement for the vehicle's users now it has been battle-tested against a Russian tank. The American-made vehicles are known for their prowess in hunter-killer engagements with larger armored machines, but in drone footage of the Stepov clash, its mobility is demonstrated as it continuously moves to dodge incoming fire while unloading a salvo with its primary M242 25mm automatic cannon weapon. Meanwhile, the Russian tank stood largely still, taking continuous fire and failing to hit back with its own 125mm stabilized gun. For even inexperienced warfighters, an immobile tank, sometimes described as acting as a pillbox, is often an easy target. Mr. de Breton Gordon said the lack of movement from the Russian tank was likely down to its inexperienced crew becoming flustered under pressure. While currently Ukrainian defenders have been actively destroying Russian armored vehicles used to support infantry on the Avdiivka front, in particular the Russian occupiers lost 41 units of armored vehicles in 3 days there. The ISW noted that Russian forces have recently made verified progress to the southwest of Avdiivka. Geolocation images published on the 17th of January show that Russian forces attacked and occupied a position east of Nevelsky, southwest of Avdiivka. Alexander Tarnovsky, commander of the Tavria Operational Strategic Group, stated on the 18th of January that Russian troops on the Avdiivka front are likely actively employing armored vehicles to support and deploy infantry. This tactic has resulted in Russian forces losing 41 armored vehicles, including 17 tanks, over the past 3 days. Alexander Stupin, spokesman for the Joint Press Center of the Tavria Defense Forces, noted that Russian forces usually use 1 or 2 tanks, several armored personnel carriers and MTLBs, tracked armored vehicles, to transport infantry before a rapid withdrawal. But subsequently, Ukrainian forces target the armored vehicles and destroyed Russian troops' tanks and armored vehicles. While Russian and Ukrainian sources reported that positional battles are ongoing to the northwest of Avdiivka near Stepov. The battle space in Ukraine continues to be the center of the technological offense-defense race between Russian and Ukrainian forces. The French Ministry of Defense, MOD, announced on the 20th of January that it launched an artillery coalition to strengthen support for Ukraine. Ukrainian partisans and satellite imagery confirmed that Ukrainian strikes against occupied Crimea in late December 2023 sank a Russian Tarantula-class corvette near Sevastopol.